Hi, welcome back to Beautiful Souls. This is going to be a special one. So, I started this series, I think, back in February or March of last year. I think it's been over a year since I last did a video on this series. I rewatched the two episodes that I have, and I was like, man, I don't really like how I did things, and I didn't really write, like, I found the notebook that I had for that series specifically, and I read through it, and I didn't really like how I wrote the story, so I redid it, and I just today just actually got done talking with Ethereos about about the basis of this series. The series was originally called "What If Asta Had a One-Winged Clover?" Now, this is going to be the remake of that series. It's the new title for this series is going to be What If Asta had Onyxia? Or Onyx. I will use Onyx for short just because, yeah, unless Asta is specifically talking about this. So, all that being said, I hope you, beautiful souls, enjoy this series. I did try to go into the Black Clover What If scene with this series, and after what I said before, I wanted to redo it and really make it something really good. So after talking with Ethereos about a few things, potentially for like the ending that I was having issues with, wrapping stuff up, in Ethereos you will know what this is. So that being said, let's get into our story. Our story starts actually not even in the Black Clover quote-unquote universe. It actually starts in a weird realm. A man is running down what appears to be a hallway, carrying 3 stones at breakneck speeds. He kind of trips and drops one of the stones, and it falls into a time vortex. This stone's name is Onyxia. Onyxia lands inside the Clover Kingdom several thousand years before Asta's even born, before a lot of rise and fall of many empires this Omega Stone has witnessed. All this time soaking up mana for a couple thousand years, and eventually it gains the ability to produce mana. Many of you that have watched the Super Int one, you'll know what an Omega Stone is. So, all that setup and everything, let's get into this. So, Asta is about 10 years old when he's 12. Sorry, I changed it 12 because 5 years was just too much power at the time. Well, I mean, he's already going to be OP as hell, but hey, that's neither here nor there. So Asta, he's about 12, and he on one of his journeys out to like train, work out, hunt for like some meat or something for the orphanage, just being like a big brother type character, just going out there to find stuff to basically put food on the orphanage's table. See, in In a couple recent years, the orphanage has kind of fallen on hard times. Not the donations and stuff that they get from like the capital has kind of lessened. Like, they don't get as much money from the central church. And this isn't no fault to the father or Sister Lily's inability to actually run this place. It's just nobles and crap. You know, like the whole background in Black Clover where nobles think they're the hot shit and they're better than anybody else. Kind of said, oh, screw that podunk town, they don't need as much money. Kind of stuff happened. So over the past 2 years, Asta, have on the weekend, quote unquote weekend, would go out and hunt, or fish, or collect herbs and stuff from the forest. Asta would also use this time to train. On one of these such days, Asta he's in the forest, and he starts hearing this voice. Come to me, Asta. This way, Asta. No, the other way. Turn. That's it. Further, come to me. And Asta's just feeling this warmth, something is drawing him to this voice. And over the past year, he's heard a voice, but he's kind of just ignored it. But now that he's in this area, it's starting to get really strong. And when he finally busts through the tree line, he hears the voice. That's right. You're almost there. A few hundred more yards, and you'll be right on top where you need to be. Asta is like, okay, what the hell is going on? Where's this voice coming from? But I don't know why, but I feel like I have to listen to it. Oh, Sister Lily, Sister Lillian is going to kill me. I'm already late. This being late in the evening when Asta finally gets to the clearing. And when he breaks through the tree line, he notices that he's at the foot of the giant demon skeleton. And Asta when he clears his eyes and everything, he sees a glint, in the ground. He walks over and he sees this shimmering stone just laying there, as though it had been placed there in a earthen chalice that had water around it. In the base of it, and the stone was just sitting there. Asta is a little creeped out because he's heard the rumors of the first Wizard King, which is why him and Yuno want to become the Wizard King. He really gets closer and he looks at the stone, and when he picks it up, he's like, whoa, that feels crazy. Maybe Sister Lily will like this. Now we're going to cut to Onyxia's perspective, the Omega Stone. It has been sitting in this spot for a few millennia, nearly 3,000 years, and it has watched, viewed, seen how magic is used, seen spells used from start to finish, has been able to sense how magic flows in the world, and has somewhat become a part of it. About 25 years before this. Well, actually, it was about 40 years before this. Onyxia did sense another, but the man was too focused on gaining knowledge of spells to fit it, to be a good host, a good partner, a good other half. So it decided to wait, maybe another will be born. And it was very willing to just sit there and wait, hidden. See, what Asta actually saw was it coming up to the surface. Before Asta arrived, it was actually fairly deep underground, like out of sensory range from pretty much anything or anyone. Terran available or extra galactic. Neither here nor there. Not really important. Just its thought process. Because it's noticed that unlike the world that it came from, this place has giants, it has elves, it has demons, it even has gods running around like the planet. But over the past couple thousand years, a lot of the other races have kind of disappeared. And it thought maybe this is how it happened in where I come from. So after it basically waiting, it senses the birth of a child that's built different. It doesn't produce any magic whatsoever, like no magic at all. There's zero magic in this child, which is inconceivable. Like, the last being that was like this wasn't even a human. But there was the boy's mother, but she kind of sapped the magic of things around it. So it decided to watch the boy as it grows. And after about 11 years of observing the boy, it decided, I'll test it. I'll call for him and see what his thoughts are when he grabs me. So it starts to call for it. Not really calling. Maybe calling for him in his dreams. Every once in a while calling out to Asta. Eventually, after a year of Onyxia calling Asta, it finally gets Asta to come to it. And it's thinking, it's like, wow, he can actually really hear me. And then it's like, it's finally here. The moment of truth. When he picks me up, our minds will be shortly linked. And I can decide if he's the one that I'll bond with. Eventually becoming one. And then Onyxia sees the thought in his mind. The first thought, after sensing its power, was to give it away. And it thought, okay, this confirms it. And at that thought of Onyxia, a bright light can be seen throughout, the village and everything, that coming from deep in the forest, near the giant skeleton of the dead demon, the petrified skeleton of the demon, and where the statue of the first Wizard King is placed. So a day pass and Asta doesn't show up. The orphanage, Sister Lily tells the younger kids to stay here. Her and the father go to town to get some volunteers to help find Asta. Not many people would volunteer. I would say a few people here and there that Asta may have helped carry stuff with, because Asta was shown to be he was stronger than what he looked before he even started to really work out. So, and Asta, through these past 12 years, has always been that kid that would see people in need and kind of help them out, help an old lady carry her food home, or help, clean a building, or clean out stalls for people for what they believed was chump change. But every single time Asta got the money from them for doing these odd jobs and stuff for him, he would always have a smile on his face and graciously accept it, which is why Onyxia decided to call out to him. And so several days passed. To be exact, 5 days passed after the disappearance of Asta. And they eventually find him in a grove that is surprisingly healthy. The grass is extremely lush. The trees are just vibrant. And the mana that is just in this area of the people that can sense mana is they can just feel mana oozing from everything in this grove. They see it's Sister Lily that find it's Sister Lily and Yuno that find him. They come running up, and both of them immediately sense this, the abundance of mana that's in this area, and they go up and they collect Asta, they get him in some cloths. Sister Lily uses her magic and everything to kind of lift him up, and they getting back to the orphanage. Asta is out cold is in bed out cold for another 5 days. So 10 days in total, Asta will be out cold. But something weird begins to happen on the 7th day. Every single time they go to change Asta's towel on his head, or bathing, they would just get this sense of immense pressure whenever they would make skin contact with Asta, and it creeps them out. But Sister Lily, the other kids of the orphanage, and even the father of the orphanage is they're not. Well, you'll see later on. They're not off-put by this, but they just feel that, it's hard to describe, an indescribable feeling whenever they make skin contact with Asta. So, after about 10 days, 5 days, Asta being missing in 5 days, he sits up one day. And this is when they're, bringing, bath water and stuff into, Asta's room. Because, they do bathe Asta. And it's not like Sister Lily or the father wouldn't have seen Asta nude before. I mean, hell, they raised both Yuno and Asta from, when they were small babies. I mean, Sister Lily was, not much older than what Asta was when they got their Grimoir. Sister Lily, I think, was 17 or 18 when she came to that church, and Asta and arrived like a little bit more like 6 months to a year after she came to the church. So I believe she was there when they came to the church. If not, she came shortly after those two had been dropped off there. So that being said, it Asta being nude would be something that either of those two haven't seen before. Just from like raising a baby, So when Asta's just sitting up, when Sister Lily opens the door, everyone just sees her drop like the bucket, and kind of catches it with like his wind magic a little bit, because he has been practicing. He's able to produce some wind magic, and he doesn't catch it entirely, but the other kids are able to help catch it. And in one of the kids, God, I forget his name. It's the little loudmouth, the little one that really bat-mouths Asta when they're leaving. It's like, you're not as great as you know. He was like, Sister Lily, you would have dropped it. And then he looks up and he begins to cry as all of the little kids run over to Asta, starting to hug him. They're just feeling this indescribable feeling when they're touching him, and they're just crying. They're like, Asta, you're awake! You're awake! Oh my God, you're awake! Yuno's just standing there, internally crying. It's like, thank God he's okay. Sister Lily, wipes away some tears, and she walks over and pats Asta on the head and kind of hugs him, and she says, thank God, we've been praying for you to wake up. Sister Lily, what's going on? Why am I here? The last thing I remember was a bright light. Then nothing. What's going on? Then, after several hours of explaining everything to Asta, at least from their perspective, Asta's like, well, I'm fine. And God, I've spent 10 days laid up while everybody else has been doing the chores. I've got to get... As he, pulls the blanket off and proceeds to, get up to, go do chores around the church. The father tells him to, just sit down and relax a little bit. Well, I'll go get the doctor of the village to have him come look at you. Make sure everything to give you a checkup. Asta's saying, no, Father, you don't need to do that. I'm totally fine. And then he looks at the father as the father's looking at him, and Asta looks down and he's like, fine. So he's like, at least let me help cook. So they do make a feast, because they haven't really been able to feed him. They've just kind of force-fed him, kind of chewing up the potatoes and stuff like that, and they're all mouths, and then kind of just forcing it down his throat, which is all they can really do. Not like they needed to do that, but they didn't know that. So after a couple of hours, after about an hour or so, they start finishing up prepping and cooking stuff. Asta spends 30 minutes getting looked over by the doctor of the village, and they say he's totally fine. Matter of fact, since the first day that we brought him back, he's actually way healthier than his checkup last year. And I was just yeah, I feel invigorated. And though he had, every single time I go to touch him, I can sense an enormous amount of mana in the boy. What happened? And then Sister Lily asks, like, could it be because we found him in that area? And they're like, did he get something? And what about that bump on his chest? Asta's like, what bump? And then he looks down and he sees like this bulge on his chest, and he's like, what is that? What happened? And just kind of smacks him. Don't you remember? We told you. We found you in a clearing that had an insane amount of mana. I don't know. Like, maybe the boy's just a late bloomer. It's not really unheard of, but it's very uncommon. His magic could have just recently come in. Maybe because he was in what could only be described as a nexus of mana, it awakened something inside the boy. Honestly, I couldn't tell you. But it is strange. He did show no signs whatsoever before of having magic. But, Asta's just, like, grinning from ear to ear. Like, he just heard the words, Asta has magic, has mana, which means he has magic. And over the next week or so, weird things start happening around Asta. Like, some plants start to grow, like, faster when he's around them. Water that he draws from, like, the well is extremely purified. Like, there's no particulates, and it could be used for, like, potion making or, like, making holy water, which is very hard to do because of how pure the water has to be. And it doesn't seem like he really gets dirty. Then, about a week and a half, 2 weeks after he's woken up, Asta is out training, and he just hears a voice. Asta, can you hear me? Wait, you're that voice I heard. Where are you? I'm here. As Asta feels like a warmth on his chest, and he kind of looks down, and then he sees like his skin like move back, and he sees like the stone on his chest, and he's like, whoa, what? Asta, calm down. I'm sorry. It took a bit for me to augment your body because of, well, you were born without magic. This is me. I'm the stone. And, well, I chose you to be my host, to inherit power. You want to become the Magic King, right? Yeah, but what are you? As he's like poking like the gem, and then like he pokes his chest like really hard and goes, ow, that hurt. And he pokes the gem like the same. In him and Onyxia like talk, and that's just like, what are you? I am Onyxia. Asta tries to like say the word, and then Onyxia just says, you can just call me Onyx if that would be better. This is very strange. I never knew being bonded to someone or something would be this relieving. Feel so good. The warmth I feel from you, Asta, is very intriguing. I never thought it would be like this. Asta's puzzled by that, but he's slowly. So he spends like the next day, the rest of the day and like the night just training and actually doing push-ups and stuff. And he notices that he's getting faster. He's getting stronger because when he went to go lift the boulder that he was trying to move, he was able to pick it up. And this thing was like twice his size. Like he would basically push it to like build up strength and stuff. And he was able to pick it up. And then he slowly puts it down. And then he hears like voices. Asta! Asta! Calling out. And he's like, and then he actually notices that it's dark out. And he's like, oh God, that's Yunu's voice. And then he hears like the other children's voices and Sister Lily, like calling out for him. And like as soon as like Sister Lily calls out his name, they just feel this like all the kids, either the ones that don't have magic or that have very weak magic, can't really sense mana that too well, just feel this immense pressure like traveling to them. And within a matter of seconds, Asta had traveled about 500 yards in a few seconds and appeared right in front of them. Dust cloud comes up and he's like, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to, it's just I started to. He looks down and like the bump on his chest is normal, and he's thinking, did I imagine all of that? No, Asta, you didn't. I'm still here. It's just humans. They can be very deceitful. Even though I can see in your memories, they are your family? Just wait until later to reveal me. So you're absolutely sure. Asta is thinking about it, and then he realizes, like, yeah, it probably wouldn't be the best to worry them. Because he saw the look on Sister Lily's face when he arrived just out. It was like a look of extreme concern and horror. And he remembers the look on everyone's face when he woke up. So he didn't want to worry them. So he decides to keep Onyx a secret. For now. And he's like, I'm sorry, I was training and I don't know, like I started to get faster and stronger, so I've just been working out. As he like walks over to Sister Lily and just kind of gently picks her up and puts her up and then gently sits her down. See, I've gotten way stronger. And like it was just full of so much energy and mana. I just had to get it out. I'm really sorry, Sister Lily, to worry you. Smacks him in the back of the head. You could have at least said something. Come back for dinner and then said something. You know how bad we've been worried about you? We thought something happened to you again. Asta scratches the back of his head and he's like, I'm sorry. So they make their way back to the orphanage. Over the next few years, Asta begins to develop very weird magic. It's where he can produce water, purified water. He can enrich the soil of ground around him. And the mana that is felt in the soil is very strong. And Sister Lily and everyone at the orphanage and the people that know where Asta was found are thinking maybe that area was there because of Asta. His mana finally unlocked, and it was just so repressed that it was an overabundance, and that bright light must have just been Asta's magic unleashing for the first time. It's what they're assuming, and Sister Lily and have questioned him about it, and the kids, and Asta kind of plays it off like, I don't really know. And Asta's even been able to, like, send Yuno's wind magic back at him a little bit stronger, which ends up making Yuno that much more confident, because him and Asta started to fight. Asta's just really fast, faster than pretty much anyone in the village, and a whole lot stronger. So Asta is able to, like, enrich soil. Plants seem to grow faster around him. He's able to produce water. So the church, the father, after about a year or so of, like, Asta doing all these feats, decides to, like, start a garden up for, like, the thing. And he asks Asta for, like, help. Unbeknownst to Asta, Onyx has been kind of helping him out, kind of making sure the soil will stay fertile and with very little help. And it's not a big farm, but just enough to, like, grow, like, more than just potatoes or however you pronounce that strange potato food that they have in Black Clover. And so they are able to, like, actually have very nutritious meals thanks to Asta and Yuno's hard work. Like, Asta doesn't really show off his abilities. It's more so he's humble about it. And this surprises Onyx, and she's thinking, the boy's going to be 15 soon. And that's when they get their Grimoire, so I've got something. Well, from what I know about the ceremony, if one doesn't come, I'll make him one. So, when Asta gets, he's about 14 and a half, this is when Onyxia starts to really go over, like, what magic is. Like, it's a life force of this world. It can enrich life, but it can also destroy it. And Asta's like, I would never use magic to destroy life. If anything, I want to use it to help other people out. Onyx just thinking without Asta knowing about these thoughts. And that's why I chose you. Asta, over the past year, has gotten used to sharing a body. I think that's the best way to describe it, with this magic stone, Omega stone, magic stone. All he knows is the thing that's inside of his chest grants him magic, and Mint grants him, like, seeming endless amount of mana, because he never, like, in his fights with Yuno, never feels the withdrawal of, like, exuding, like, a lot of mana. But the weirdest thing is Asta never leaks mana. Like, anyone that's around him can't sense mana coming off of him, but when they touch him, they just feel this immense pressure wash over them. So during their conversation, like, Onyx says, you got 6 months before you get your Grimoire, and then another X amount of time, however long it was between the Grimoire ceremony and them actually going to the Magic Knight's capital, yada yada yada. And then about, like, I'm going to say this is a year, because, like, they're, like, 16 or something when they go to take the Magic Knight's exam. Like, you have to be 16. You have to have had your Grimoire for a year before you could, apply. There are exceptions, but most of them are nobles. That being said, back to our story. So over the next 6 months, Asta does train a lot more on, like, actually performing, like using his water creation, his flame creation, his earth creation, and his wind creation to a better extent. Onyxia also teaches him how to, like, dispel magic and to, like, reinforce his body with magic, which further increases his strength. Basically teaching him stuff that people can do without a grimoire, with, like, the type of magic it's giving him. So he learns reinforcement magic, like the mana shield, and also how to, like, dispel magic, like illusions and stuff like that. Nothing too extreme yet. Like, he can, like, if somebody put an enchantment on something in, like, or a trap enchantment, he can dispel it. No big deal, except for, like, dungeons. I'm not going to say he can dispel all magic. So we get to the Grimoire ceremony. And yes, the thing with the noble stealing Yuno's necklace does happen, but that happened before he was bonded with Onyx, so that happened sooner than when it, because if he didn't, that noble probably would have lost his head. Just say it. So they come to the ceremony, everything goes like in canon, and everyone is like, wow, a 4-leaf clover, and then they just see ask, what about me? I didn't get a grimoire. Everyone begins to laugh at him. And then, like, start reading going, he's just a peasant. Bet he doesn't even have any magic. And they just see, like, small flames kind of come out of his hands and then get washed away by water. And they're like, what? He can use magic? And then, in Asta's head, Onyx tells him, raise your hand to that bookcase. We're not leaving here without a grimoire. I'm getting tired of having to tell you how to do things. It's time that you learn how to do your own magic and create your own magic. So just raise your hand up to that bookshelf and I'll make you one. Which it had planned to do that. So as Asta does, like, the bookcase begins to glow again. One 4-leaf grimoire pops out and rushes to, like, in front of his hand. Another 4-leaf rushes out into, like, his hand, About, like, 5 4-leaf grimoires show up in front of Asta, just hovering there. And then, like, the bookshelf begins to shake. Grimoires start falling off, and then this tattered grimoire that looks like it's been ripped, and if you would look closely, you would see 5 clovers, like, comes rushing out and gets in between all of, like, the other 5 grimoires, and then this bright light exudes from, like, all of them, and they just kind of collide with each other. And everyone is just shocked at what is happening right here. They're like, he has multiple grimoires in there. All 4-leaf clover grimoires. Yuno's just over there fuming, like, what the hell? And then after, like, the light on the ball clears and it, like, stops circling, it expands and everyone just feels this rush of mana all over them. And then when they see the light completely clears, they see a single grimoire drop into Asta's hand, and it has 6 leaves on it. 6, and everyone's like, 6-leaf clover? That's impossible. That's not even possible. How did... And then they see it, and each leaf of the clover is a different color. Like, there's red, blue, white, a black one, a green one, and a brown like clover on it, and then the binder of the cover just seems to have this weird multicolored shimmer to it. It drops into Asta's hand, and he opens it, looks through, and it's mostly blank, but there's some spells written down in it. And he's thinking, okay, that's weird. And then he looks at it again, and he's like, 6 leaves. And Onyx is like, yeah, well, I thought it'd be funny. They all awning over, like, over there. I thought making you something that's unheard of may make you get some attention that you don't want. And with that, you beautiful souls, that's where we're going to end this part. This is going to be part A, part 0A. The next part is going to be 0B, which is going to cover him dealing with the Jade Mage and their training arc with Yuno and everything. And the Magic Knight's entrance exam. That being said, let me know down below what you think of this revamped version of my first series dealing with Black Clover. I really did put a lot of time in this, and thank you, Ethereos, for kind of let me use you as a soundboard for like some end of series stuff. That being said, like the video because it does help with the algorithm. I'm trying to hit 10K before the end of the year. Leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I will see you beautiful souls in the next video.